So where does music kind of come into play? Was that something your family introduced you to, or did you kind of find yourself? Yeah.
Something I found myself. My family was always a little bit musical. Everybody in my family could sing, but nobody ever really like kind of went like scratched the itch. They never really like went all the way with anything. Then my brother, when I was probably I must have been like 10 or 11, he got a guitar and it was always just laying around, and so I'd pick it up and mess around with it and until I could play chords, and then until I could play them fluidly together. And it wasn't too long after that that I started singing. And once I started singing, I never really got any better at guitar because I realized I could just play chords and sing at bars and you know do that, and that was all I needed to do really. So when I was about 16 or 17, I started playing out at the bars. Um, and I started a band. It was a funk rock band,
Yes.
and we were just a bunch of kids, 17 and 18 years old, playing in bars all over Illinois. Um, for nothing, for like
Hmm.
$300. And then I moved to Bloomington to go to school. Went to Illinois State there and started playing an open mic there in town at a place called Six Strings Club.
Hmm.
And the owner was there and was listening to me, and he's just like, "Man, we got to get a band around you." And I was like, "I have a band. It's a funk rock band." He's like, "No,
Nah.
we need to get you in a country band." He's like, "That's what sells tickets and that's what gets people out." And so we started a band, and he was the owner of the club, so we played the best nights there. There's an arena down the road, and anytime there'd be like a Cole Swindell or Morgan Wallen or whoever's playing there,
Yeah.
we'd play after, and it would just be wall to wall people in there every time. So that got my feet wet with playing out. And then I was in Bloomington for about 5 years. Then I moved down to Nashville and just been chasing it since then. There was a lot of national acts that would come through Six Strings Club, and I would always talk to them when I was up there, and they'd always just be like, "Man, you just got to get to Nashville." And it
Yeah.
it just made more and more sense over time. It's like if you want to be surrounded by the best, if you want to take this as far as you can, if you don't want to be playing covers for the rest of your life, you got to get down to Nashville. So
Yeah, for sure. It's always really cool to kind of have be when you're at least initially cutting your teeth, you kind of fall into this really cool opportunity where you you find somebody that sees something in you and they just happen to have that infrastructure in place to kind of help you move along quickly, because obviously if have you not, had you not been able to play at the six string club, who knows where things would be right now.
yeah, life's weird like that, man. I'm a big believer in you can't really do the thing you want to do without having some champions along the
Mhm.
way. I've had several, and I'm always looking for more. So if you're
Yeah,
out there listening and you want to be a champion,
yeah,
could always use more.
yeah.
Um, but I think it's huge, man, and I hope to be that for somebody someday too,
Nice.
myself.
That's really cool. So how long have you been in Nashville now?
6.5 years. It's
Nice.
which is crazy to say. It flies by.
And that in that 6.5 years, Nashville has changed ridiculously. It's
Absolutely. I mean, I
it's
moved here in 2018, and I've seen it go through a pandemic and come out of a pandemic and all kinds of changes, man. And
yeah,
it's ever expanding. I feel like I hardly recognize it when I get on town now because it's just a new high rise somewhere every day, it
right,
seems like.
right. I came back to Nashville earlier this year. I went down for a CRS. And that was the first time I'd been to Nashville since like right before the pandemic, so 2020. And I was sitting there, I was like, I don't recognize anything. And it's
Hmm.
like that was only 4 years. And so I can only
Yeah.
imagine these musicians that have been there 6, 10 years, how much has changed. So
It seems like it's slowing down on the construction front a little bit at least.
mhm,
They just like filled in all the holes. There was like,
mm,
all these little holes all over downtown, and now there's just huge, high rises
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah,
But it seemed like at one point in time you could look around in any direction and see a crane. It was like,
Wow.
you'd see 20, 30 of them along the horizon.
Hmm.
Crazy.
Now, if they could just teach people in Nashville how to drive, that would be amazing.
That is true. The problem is we have so many tourists in town
Yeah.
too that are trying to drive these roads like the locals. I mean, like half the locals can't drive them either, to be
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
But then you have the tourists, and some of them have been drinking, and there's potholes all over the road, like potholes that'll swallow up your whole car, basically. It's wild out there.
Oh yeah, it is. I was driving back from somewhere and I was sitting in like the right hand lane, and it's like, oh, you got to be in the second to the left hand or the second from the left hand lane. I'm like, okay. So I jump over, and then my GPS is like, okay, now you get, and my GPS doesn't even know where it's taking me. So I'm like, I
Yeah.
look like that stupid tourist that doesn't know where he's going. And I'm like,
That's okay, brother. I do that. I probably do that at least once a week anyways. It's fun.
fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah.
So you're in Nashville now. You said you've been here or been there about 6.5 years. Um, and you're just teased a new it's a new
Yeah.
single, but it's leading to a new project or a series
New
of things.
collection, yeah.
So what's kind of been running? What have you kind of been working on over the last year? Because it's been about a year since you've released a single or a project.
Yep. Yeah, it's been, let's see, I want to say it was late September or October
Mhm.
of last year. So yeah, it's coming up on a year, which is crazy. I when I started releasing music in 2020, I thought it was just going to be nonstop for the rest of my life kind of thing, but I've kind of realized after some time, I put out 11 singles, and a lot of those singles I love, but a lot of those were necessary to get me to where I'm at now. And I think that they were just kind of stepping stones, like songs that some of them that I'm not crazy about, and I don't think that they define me as an artist currently, but they were who I was at the time.
Yeah.
I was just figuring it out, I was just trying to, I'll admit, a lot of those songs I was chasing like a popular current sound a lot of the time, and that's not exactly what I would encourage a lot of people to do. I think it's important to dig into influence and what feels authentically you. What would you release if there wasn't another person on the planet? If you just did it because you had to, because you felt so compelled. So that's the stuff that I've been digging into a lot more lately. I had this last year at the changing of the year, I had a bit of an epiphany, I guess, where I decided to cut the cover music out completely, with the exception of some stuff here downtown, which is just easy for me.
Hmm.
But along with that, I wanted to get way more intentional with the music that I release and that I write. Um, and so every write has been with that mentality, implemented into the write. And so we've been getting really good songs, and I've got a stack of 5 or 6 or 7 right now, somewhere in there that'll get released. And then I'm also still writing almost every day, just trying to beat those songs. So the music moving forward is gonna hopefully feel really different to my audience, and it feels different for me. I'm excited to put it out on a different level because I'm not hinging everything on the success of the song. I'm just putting it out because I think it's really good, and it's something that I would listen to if I was a listener of Clayton Shay, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. Do you remember what kind of triggered this epiphany? Was there like a specific thing that triggered it, or?
Um, you know, it was uh it was a lot of things. I think we have these like pivotal moments in our life where we're doing things that aren't necessarily taking us in the path that we need to go. And I think that in that moment you have two choices. You could either one, stay comfortable and keep doing what you're doing, which, is the easy choice to make, or shake things up and do things differently and be uncomfortable and hopefully grow in the end. And that's what I've always tried to push myself to do, is to make the uncomfortable decisions that, I prior to this year, I had been touring a lot,
Mm.
every weekend, pretty much February through. the end of October and in November sometimes, every weekend playing 2 shows a weekend all across the country, and it was burning me out because I was playing so many cover gigs, and I was playing other people's music. So, and the environment that it created was a place where I couldn't play my own music usually, because if I did, I'd lose the crowd.
Yeah.
And so, along with that, it also made me realize that I need to get way more intentional about the music I'm putting out, because I truly believe that to get to that next level, that next tier, you have to have a thing. You have to have a sound, a visual, and a sonic brand that is recognizably you and authentically you. And so that's what I also, along in that same process, I decided I need to put more focus on.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, is that new sound? Is this the farm emo thing that I saw on your Instagram page? Is that kind of what this new sound is, or would you say that's more of your old sound?
No, I think farm emo is pretty accurate. I put that on my Instagram bio because so I don't know if you remember, I posted a screenshot of a guy. I have a song, Sign Another Man, that's gone really viral on YouTube, and it's gotten just tons of comments.
Hmm.
And when you get tons of comments, you get lots of haters in those
Oh yeah.
comments. And so one of the haters was like, guys, don't believe that. How do you say it? I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, guys, don't believe that this is actually country. It's just glorified farm emo. And I was like, that's awesome.
Thanks,
I
guys.
love I love farm emo. So I just slapped that in my bio. I love sad music. And yeah, so it's like country rock is the simplest way to put it, but
Hmm.
I grew up listening to like 2000s alternative rock, like, you know, Creed and Three Doors Down and
Hmm.
Lifehouse and Goo Goo Dolls and all those guys. So like that's definitely going to play into the sound a little bit too.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because from the sounds of it, you went through a few different phases as far as like music. Because you said you had like a funk rock band there originally, and then obviously listening to what you listen to. Is that did did all that just kind of play into kind of finding your sound, or was it kind of more of when you decided to make that transition to country? Let's stick in this kind of vein, and then figure out where my lane, because obviously in country, like a lot of other genres, you could have separate lanes within one genre. Was it kind of,
Subgenres, yeah.
yeah.
Um, you know, I I fought the urge to do country for a long time. There's a weird like stigma against country when I was a kid, when I was in high school. Surprisingly, because I'm from a very rural area,
Hmm.
but it was like the cool kids didn't listen to country. They listened to rap, or they listened to
Yep.
like heavy rock.
Yep.
And my influences were all over the place. I loved like the Beatles. I loved Frank Sinatra. I loved all over the board.
Mhm.
So I didn't really know what I liked then too much. I just listened to stuff when I liked it. I wasn't as intentional with like figuring it out. Um, when I made the transition to country, playing in that band in Bloomington,
Mhm.
I wasn't even sure that that was something I wanted to do permanently. I was just like, this guy knows what he's talking about, so let me just try this country thing out.
Yeah.
I had a few country songs that I liked a lot. Um, but my funk rock band was like, no country music. They're like definitely not. Uh, but I grew to love it, and now in hindsight, I think about times when I was riding in the car with my dad when I was really young, and I remember songs like "Young" by Kenny Chesney and like
Mhm.
"Little Bitty" by Alan Jackson, and I remember loving those songs.
Mhm.
So those are definitely a part of like my upbringing. Um, but I think at some point in time I got too country focused. I started listening to the radio and like only the hits on the radio, and being like, all right, what do I have to do to get that?
Mhm.
And it's kind of like a gross approach to me in hindsight. I don't fault myself back then. It's all part of the growth, all part of figuring it out.
Yeah.
But I think at the time I was writing too much for the success of the song and not enough for like the artistic expression.
Yeah.
So now now I'm leaning to the opposite end of the spectrum and really just trying to be as artistic with this stuff as I can and dump it all out of me. And then eventually maybe I'll come back and meet somewhere in the middle at a commercial artistic landing place. But
Fair.
I have also really accepted that like I don't think that this thing is ever like a finished. I don't, the sound that I'm arriving at right now is not like a developed thing. I think it's always evolving.
Mhm.
It's just a snapshot of who I am right now.
Yeah,
So
for sure. And I think the awareness of that is what makes good musicians is okay, yes, now I'm a little bit more influenced by Southern Rocky, like whatever it is, doesn't mean that's what I'm going to be in 3 years when I release the next big project or 10 years when I release two, whatever it is. So that ability
absolutely.
to kind of adapt and read what's a authentic to you as a musician, but also your fans kind of support and respond to. And but I think at the end of the day, as long as you're kind of being authentic to who you are, you know, your fans are always going to be there for you anyway. So
Yeah, somebody who I admire a lot is Jelly Roll.
mhm.
I'm not gonna claim I'm the hugest fan of his music,
Yeah,
but I admire how he does his artistry. He's super authentic, and I don't mean this to say, and I'm not trying to badmouth him at all, but he's not the greatest singer. If you took all the singers in country music, he's not
yeah,
going to be at the top as
yeah.
far as singing ability goes. I like his voice. All that to say is, I was at a Jelly Roll concert, and it was in Bloomington.
Mhm.
So there was a few people who like came up and talked to me, and they're like, "Hey, are you gonna get to meet Jelly Roll?" I was like, "Maybe. I don't know. My old videographer is his video guy now, so it's
Mhm.
like a good chance." Like, if you do, will you tell him he saved my life with his music? And I was just like, damn,
Yeah, yeah.
that's that's what I want to do. I mean, even if it's not saving people's lives, I want to connect with people, and that be the main driving force of my fan base is just
Mhm.
like the connection they feel to my music.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you brought up Jelly Roll because talking about not being who you were originally, like I remember listening to him in what was it, like 2008, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in that ballpark when he was
Yeah,
doing his hip hop thing. And I was just like, I'd kind of forgotten that I had a couple of his songs on my playlist back in the day. And then when he started like really coming in with the country thing, I started scrolling through his Spotify playlist. I was like, wait a minute, he was on this song. And, so it's just kind of like one of these things where it's like, talk about a transformation, and so.
persistence too. I mean,
Mhm.
he's a good example of a lot of things, and yeah, he never gave up, and that's what you get when you never give up.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, to kind of jump back to your upcoming release, do you have any like info on it? Do you have like a date or anything, or is that still all TBD?
No, August 30th is the date that it'll be dropping. And then we're gonna try to do every 4-ish weeks,
Hmm.
um, for the foreseeable future. I don't know how long I'll do it for. I've kind of decided that I'm gonna allow myself these little breaks here and there,
Hmm.
from releasing. I think it's good for me,
Yeah.
for my soul. It just because if I get too into the artistic release mode, brain, if I get too into that, sometimes I feel myself being pulled by this song's got to be successful. This song contemporary? Is this song commercial? Is it what Morgan Wallen's doing or whatever? And it's like that's when it gets gross for me. So I gotta like pull myself back. So I'm gonna keep the train rolling. Like I said, I've got somewhere in the ballpark of 5, 6, 7 songs that are on like the back burner right now that I think are all very authentically me. Um, I've got an amazing producer I'm working with, and we're gonna just crank these songs out. And if songs keep coming in that feel like they're of that same vein, we'll just keep the train rolling for a while. But if I get to where I'm feeling like I don't think that it's right anymore, I'll take a little pause and just write again for a while
Nice.
and figure some things out.
Nice. When you kind of get in one of these writing, like obviously right now you're kind of in a recording releasing mindset, but when you get into like a more writing 100% focused on writing and stuff like that, do you find yourself listening to more music when you're writing, or do you find yourself listening to more music when you're not writing, like music that
Hmm,
isn't yours?
that's a really good question. Um, I would say listening to more when I'm writing
Mhm.
probably because I'm digging for influence then. Um, at the turn of the year when I first started like really writing intentionally and selfishly for like my artistic stuff and trying to dig for that, I was going to the gym and listening to an album every day. Um, just reaching out to people on my Instagram stories and being like, "Hey guys, what's an album that you have not been able to get away from? Like you're, since you've heard it, like you just
Yeah.
have to you keep listening to it. I'm interested in that because even if it's not of the same style that I want, there's something to albums you can't put down. There's something to that, whether it's pop or rock or country or whatever. So I'm interested in what that thing is and finding that thing for myself too.
Nice. That's awesome. I go through phases like that where I'm trying to figure out who I want on the podcast next. So I'll go like searching for new projects, and I have to kind of walk that fine line because half the time it's people actually sending me stuff that they're really into, but the other half the time it's a musician trying to get their music,
Sure.
whatever. And it's like I get it. I respect the hustle, but this isn't kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that
Yeah.
touches you, not
Yeah.
necessarily that you're trying to promote. So,
That's right. That's right.
but so kind of outside of music, what have you been getting into? Like when you need to. I know you'd mentioned earlier that you golf a bit, but what
I
have you
do.
been getting into?
I golf pretty much any chance I can. Yeah, I don't have a ton of room for other like hobbies and passions or obsessions or anything like that. Um, I game a little bit. I play some Call of Duty with some of my buddies, but I'm not like super into that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not extreme in that or anything. It's like an end of the day wind down kind of thing once in a while. But mostly I'd say it's like 90% music, 8% golf, and 2% video games.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I have a bit of a problem with obsession about things that I'm passionate about.
Hmm.
So like music occupies the majority of my brain space, and then golf occupies a good chunk of it too. So
Yeah. I feel like golf and music are kind of a good A-B combo because like golf, you can kind of shut off that creative side and it's just purely physical repetition and
that's right.
like, that aspect of things. But then music, you got to access an entire different part of your brain. And I feel like that's a good A-B, like having a more creative outlet and then something a little bit more physical, whether it's golf, whether it's baseball, but like whatever it is. So that's really cool.
There's a
How
lot
long?
of similarities between them too.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's like golf is such a humbling sport. You can go out one day and feel like you're crushing it, and then you can
Mhm.
go out the next day and suck
Oh yeah.
completely. Like, and then you can have a great shot, one that you think is gonna like be something you can repeat a bunch of times, and then your next stroke is terrible.
Yep.
It's like, uh, I love the challenge of golf, just in the similar way that I love the challenge of music because like you can be really good at it, but it might take you a while to get your game down exactly how you want it, kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Absolutely. I got to find that physical sport to do. I used to bowl being from Northern Illinois. I'm sure you had a lot of friends that bowled because that seemed to be
Oh
the
yeah.
big thing up there.
Oh yeah.
And I got to a point where I was bowling so much that I destroyed my knees. And
Oh.
so now I gotta like I haven't bowled in like 12 years or something. So it's like I kind
Mm,
of want to get back into it, but I gotta like in the same thing as you were like I just can't get as obsessed with it. Like
sure.
once in a while I can do it, but when I was coming out of high school, I was at the bowling alley 4 or 5 hours a day every day of the week, and it was just very bad.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. Um But yeah, so how far or what are you doing as far as shows right now? Are you playing pretty consistently or yeah,
So shows are they're here and there right now, intentionally because like I said, I cut cover shows out completely at
yeah.
the beginning of this year.
Hmm.
Which, cover shows were 90% of my shows for the most part. So I'm taking any artist gigs that come my way. I played Tailgate and Tallboys up in
Yeah.
Bloomington earlier this year, which was one of the coolest shows I ever played. I played Stonies out in Vegas earlier this year. And then I've been doing these what we call house party shows,
Hmm.
which is basically just, I take one of my what I call like super fans, somebody who buys all the music, all the merch, comes to the shows when I'm around their area, all that stuff, just champions, basically, like we are
Yeah.
talking about earlier. And then we do a show at their place and they bring all their people out. And it's just a good way to domino effect fans, basically.
Nice.
Um, and so we've done Boston and we did a West Coast run, some shows in Illinois. So we're gonna try to do that again this fall,
Nice.
like a little house party tour. I don't know if we'll get the whole thing done. It's closing in on it now, but we might just have a few shows scattered here and there. And then I've got some support gigs for Corey Smith that I'm gonna be doing in September as well.
Nice. Nice. And then you'd mentioned that when you are playing shows pretty consistently, you like to take that November to January time frame off,
Um,
or is that
like everything kind of shuts down in December and January.
yeah?
It's shows are harder to find and nobody's writing. So it's kind of like it just kind of happens naturally. I don't necessarily need to shut down myself. Like I'm good to go if there's still stuff going on, but
Hmm.
it pretty typically happens that way. Also always do an annual writers retreat in December, which is a nice kind of like cap to the year for us. We get such good songs at those writers retreats because we're just so unplugged and just dialed into what we're doing. And it's just me and some of my best buddies out in a cabin in the Smoky Mountains, and we
Nice.
drink a bunch of whiskey and do other things and write music.
Nice. I've often thought about doing a live and amplified sponsored like writers retreat like that. Just go up. For me, it would be like in Kentucky because that's where I know that's where we'd vacation when I was a kid. We'd go down into like Western Kentucky, Kentucky Lake, Lake Barkley, that area there,
Yeah.
and we'd go camping and all that stuff. And it's just like that'd be a really cool spot to host some kind of like a writers retreat or something. So
Heck yeah, that'd be great. I love that area.
yeah, it's talk about hot though. Like that during the summer, that place gets hot. So,
Oh
um,
yeah, we do them in the wintertime. That way we're I mean we usually are kind of shut in.
yeah,
Like, we're not really going out and doing a ton of stuff. We're there to write. We have fun too, but
yeah,
we're not really doing like activities or anything. So
fair enough, fair enough. But yeah, I don't want to keep you too much longer here. So if anybody wants to check out your music, the upcoming releases, all that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
any social media, at Clayton Shay Music, SHAY, and then ClaytonShay.com. Yeah, those are the best places. I'm on all the streaming platforms. So
Sweet,
got one coming out August 30th, and then we'll be pumping them out regularly for the rest of the year.
nice, awesome. Well, once again, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you all later.